There are so many reasons not to skip breakfast. So many savory, mouth-watering, tasty, delicious beyond all belief reasons. Actually, that last one was pretty convincing. Stop by for a McDonald's breakfast. Mix and match a sausage biscuit, sausage McMuffin, sausage burrito, or hash browns, any two for just $2. Price and participation may vary, cannot be combined with combo meal.
I'm Bob Sullivan, host of AARP's The Perfect Scam. This next episode will make you think twice before booking your next vacation.
Cancer during COVID was tough. We needed something to look forward to. So I look on Craigslist and, oh my goodness, this house looks perfect. Emails go back and forth. We do a wire transfer.
The crooks are always experimenting, figuring out what works. The crooks are always innovating.
Subscribe to The Perfect Scam podcast today.
The following is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network.
This is John Silver, lead recruiter of the Dark Order, and you are listening to All Things Elite.
Welcome to the 116th episode of Social Suplex's podcast about AEW with the proclivity for positivity. Welcome to All Things Elite. My name is Austin Summers, and I am the host of this lovely show. Joining with me, as always, is my good buddy, my good friend, Floyd Johnson Jr. My man, how you doing?
I am doing great. So today I discovered a new hobby, because this is the first time I out and out did it. It's called figure hunting. And I know a lot of people out there that do this before, person on the phone with us also included. They have done this a while. But today I went out and I went to 4 Walmarts and 4 Targets looking for AEW figures. Not because I need them. Actually, I got most of them. But it was just because, it's fun. So, I thought it'd be a good done. But, man, when you get out the car and you go into the store and you're going to the section, there's this excitement, anticipation, like, hey, what am I going to find? What is it going to be there? I hope it's there. And then you get there and there's something that you want. It's like, oh my God. It's like the greatest, one of the greater feelings ever that don't have anything to do with food or sex. It's really good. It's just a really good feeling. And, actually, food, sports, and sex. Those would be the 3. But, yeah, it was just a really good feeling. JR told me last night, he just messages me. He wasn't telling me to look for anything. He's like, yeah, I'm really looking for a Bam Bam Bigelow. So the 3rd store, I get the last Bam Bam Bigelow. I was like, that's so cool. It's like, dude, go. And then I went to this other store. I asked for stuff in the back. They didn't have anything in the back. But this dude had this Ultimate Elite Ric Flair. And I just thought it looked really cool. So I went ahead and bought that. And then around the 6th store total, Target, they had a Miro Unmatched figure. And I didn't even want the Miro Unmatched figure. But they had it. So I bought it.
Sometimes you just come across something and you're like, oh shit, I never see that normally. I'm just going to get it anyway.
And I just got it anyway. And it was just like, I got these 3 things. If you would have asked me at the beginning of the day, were there any of the 3 things that I was actually looking for? I would have said no. I was like, yeah. Because I really was on the search for Cody LJN. That's my white whale right now. There's the Walmart exclusive one that's in red, not blue. And then there's the regular blue one. Because even though I did pre-order the LJN, I want another one because I actually want to take it out the box and display it around my room somewhere. And it's like, I want one for in the box and one for out of the box. So, I don't know. Figure hunting is my new sport to do because I'm kind of bored. You know, I don't have kids or anything like that. So, when I have a day off, like most people watch TV, you know, play video games. Well, as you may know, I work overnight. So guess what I do during my normal shift? I watch TV and play video games. So when I get a day off, you know the last thing I want to do? Watch TV. Yeah, it's like most people are like so excited to get off so they can watch TV and play video games. That's pretty much my life. I've played through a whole 162 game season and playoffs in baseball, and I'm halfway through the second season. That's how much free time I have.
Yeah. Well, speaking of JR, actually, it's really cool that you brought him up because he happens to be our third. We have our friend, our guest, AEW expert, Jesus JR Perez. You can also catch him on his horror podcast, the Trick or Treaters podcast. JR, my man, how you been?
Who's the third guy?
It's you.
Dude, I was just about to say that. I want that audio now, and I want to play that when we have a third guest. Who's the third guy?
Is he the third man?
Yeah.
Yes. Man, it's been a week. This week was the first time in 500 days that I've been back in my office at school because we've been, working remotely since March 18, 2020. So trying to get back to the, normal everyday life is been very interesting and exhausting. Floyd says even though he's older than me, he calls me the old man because like at 7 o'clock, I'm already ready for bed. But today literally accomplished nothing except around 5 o'clock, I decided to get up, leave my house and go for a bike ride. And I was out biking around for about an hour. And, I work out just like I used to when I was in wrestling. I wear, like a sweatsuit or a hoodie, even in 100+ degree weather. And it was funny. This older man stopped me and he said, son, why are you wearing a hoodie in this weather? And I said, well, sir, going back to bases, embracing the grind of wrestling. That's what I used to do since I was in high school. And he's like, oh, really? He goes, how old are you? I said, I'm 33. He goes, son, you ain't as young as you used to. You better take care of yourself. And he kept pedaling away.
That's an interaction.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I'll share a little bit of what's going on. I actually got to do something I haven't done since everything shut down. I went to the best theme park ever, Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio. I went there with my family, kind of like as an early celebration for my sister's birthday, but also because like we're just doing stuff before things either go bad. We're basically just trying to have fun while we can. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. If you want to go to a park that has the best roller coasters, just straight up roller coasters, Cedar Point is the best place. Dragster was running. That thing is never running. When we got there, it was down because of course it is. There's never a time where you go to Cedar Point where the Top Thrill Dragster isn't down. But I checked my phone to see the wait times to see if it was running like later in the afternoon, and it was. And we bolted for it because we knew the second that thing shuts down, it's going to be down for another few hours. And we were able to ride that and watch footage of that ride. It is one of the craziest things you'll see. That thing it fires like a torpedo, just shoots you straight ahead. Such a great ride. But that's what I got to do. So I don't know, Floyd. You don't strike me as a roller coaster guy, do you?
I do love the roller coasters. I went to Universal for the first time when I was 20 something, and I rode roller coasters there, and I just thought it was the greatest thing ever. I love the rides. But I do have a report for y'all. He just said Ohio is better than Michigan. He just said it. News. News. August 7th, breaking news. Ohio's better than Michigan.
Floyd is twisting my words. Sandusky, Ohio is where Cedar Point happens to be. But that is one of the few good things about Ohio because there's nothing else. There are two good things about Ohio. 21 Pilots and Cedar Point. Other than that, and The Miz. I guess you could throw a third one in there. The Miz is the third. Other than that, there's no reason to go to Ohio. There's no reason to visit Ohio. They always tout about they have like a Michigan Savers thing that you can do for Cedar Point. And they have like a Coca-Cola, like you can get drinks all day, like free refills and stuff like that. And normally you get like the like refillable like souvenir cup. They didn't even give us that. So they're gypping us right now. I'm sorry. It seems like Ohio's upset that they're simply just a football school and they can't beat a team called Oral Roberts in the tournament.
I got a question. When was the last time Michigan beat Ohio State?
We never talk about that, but it's fine. They want to go on
okay.
that. They want to go on that. That's fine. I pray every day that Jim Harbaugh no longer works for Michigan football because I don't trust that man anymore. But that's besides the point.
No, I had to give you. I had to give you crap because I saw you like this is the greatest place, and I'm like, but it's in Ohio. Oh my God!
Look, hell can have nice places too.
Like hey, there is places in Texas
exactly
that I like. Unfortunately,
I would go to Texas just to do like the Alamo Draft House because like the movie theaters they have there are so cool because you could just order a straight up pizza to your fucking seat.
Yeah, we have those in Oklahoma too. So
yeah, well, exactly. Well, then I'll just go to Oklahoma then.
Yes, because Oklahoma is because I don't know if I've ever told you this story. Oklahoma once had a great amount of cheese, and it caused a problem. We're lactose intolerant, and we pooed out, and that was Texas. Because Texas is just a big piece of shit. Okay? There you go.
Okay, there we go. Anyways, with that little talk out of the way, we gotta talk AEW, we gotta talk wrestling. We got a lot to talk about with AEW Dynamite Homecoming back at the Daily's Place for one more night. And of course, we got leading into Rampage's debut, and of course, the United Center show, and All Out. There's a lot on the horizon. Before we get into the show, I want to make sure you guys are downloading this fine podcast on Google or Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy us on Spotify, you can also give us a share with your friends, family, coworkers, whoever you wish. Or if you listen on any other platforms where you can get podcasts, give us a share. You can also leave a rating and a review. Let us know how we're doing if you're so inclined. You can also leave a donation through our podcast provider, Red Circle. We'd be incredibly happy, and you'd be generous as crazy if you would do that. Easiest way to support us, though, is on social media. On Twitter, we are at ATElitePod, at Social Suplex. Those are our friends, our podcasting network that make this show possible. Check out all their other shows. I am at SZoomer4. Well, formerly that. I am now at Austin Sumowitz, AUSTIN. SZUMOWICZ.
So you're even forgetting. That's even crazy.
I do, bro. I've said that line so many times that it's just like I've had that handle for like.
It's a song,
years.
And that's your lyrics, man.
Yeah, exactly. You pull the ripcord, and that's just what I say. And Floyd is at Floyd Johnson Jr. on Twitter. JR, where can people find you on Twitter? And what do you guys got coming up for the Trick or Treaters podcast so people can be excited?
So you can find me to go on the theme of being horror. I'm now at Cucuy Professor. That is Cucuy Professor. Cucuy is Spanish or a Mexican folktale as like the boogeyman. So that's why I changed my handle to that. Something that us Mexicans have been terrified since we were kids. El Cucuy. But as far as the Trick or Treater podcast, you can find us at Trick or Treat Pod. That is at Trick or Treat Pod. The month of August, we are covering Netflix original horror films. Yesterday, August, what was that? August 6th, we dropped our first review, which was Fear Street, Part 1, 1994. And then next week, we are covering, I believe it's called #Alive. And it's literally the name of the movie, #Alive. It is a movie that I believe is a South Korean zombie film. And so that will be dropping next Friday, August 13th. Friday the 13th. So I know we probably should have done Friday the 13th, but since we're doing Netflix originals for the month of August, that's why we're sticking with that. So I'm really excited about this month because typically when we do our horror reviews, some of the movies are not available like on Amazon Prime or Netflix. So people, if they want to like kind of watch along and then listen to us, they got to pay for it. So if you have Netflix, all the movies are going to be available on Netflix for this month.
All right. Well, first getting into our big news of the week, it's kind of a talk and question that we have for everybody on the podcast because slight little spoiler alert for this week's episode of Dynamite Homecoming. It did 1 million yet again. Dynamite, I want to say this is 4 weeks in a row that AEW Dynamite has done over 1 million in the ratings. And honestly, just the question is because since returning to the normal time slot after the issues with, of course, the NBA Finals and the playoffs and all that, now they're back on their normal time slot, and they're going to be soon getting everything situated where that will be the time slot. Is this the new normal for AEW Dynamite to continually do a consistent 1 million? Is that their audience? It's just going to be there every single week, and then it'll fluctuate from that point. And I honestly don't know because I mean, like the shows have been promoted very well to the point where I feel like every week for AEW can be viewed as must-watch TV with the way that they build up the big marquee matches, especially this week with the Malachi Black and Cody Rhodes match that was being advertised as the main thing to watch for this episode. But considering how I just see it, and I'm crazy happy the fact that they continue to do that, and they're doing well in the demos as well. I don't know if this is the new normal. I'll go to JR on this one first because honestly, I don't know. But do you think that this could be the new normal where AEW just, for Dynamite, they consistently do 1 million?
Well, I think I do think it'll be around 1 million. Originally, before we got to, and you are correct, Austin, it is for the last 4 weeks beginning July 14th through August 4th has been over 1 million. It was 1.02, 1.1, 1.1. Before that, July 7th was 871,000. And then I think originally I thought it was going to be probably around 800 to about 1.1 million. And then as we've seen the other part is with NXT moving to Tuesday nights, it frees up anybody who was potentially like crossing over. Maybe they'd watch NXT first and then back later they'll go watch AEW, vice versa. I think it's benefited obviously AEW in the long run by sticking with Wednesday nights and NXT moving off of it. But I do see that this is going to be their range from about 1.1 to probably maybe 1.25. And this is one of the things though that maybe for a longer discussion at a different time, and Floyd will tell you, him and I have had this conversation multiple times, is when you're looking at increasing your viewership, there are some things that AEW may have to change. And I'll leave it as a simple, you've previously you had Nick Gage versus Chris Jericho, and then you had Lance Archer versus Moxley. For people that are our age, they may be into that type of stuff. But if you grow your audience with potentially family viewing, that could be a potential turnoff. And some people may say, well, they don't do it often. But for somebody who's talked to parents who are wrestling fans and somebody who, that I have a niece or nephew, these are things that parents are going to very easily just be like, well, I don't want my kid watching this because I don't know what's going to be on. They're not going to be checking every week to see if they're going to have, I would just say, a hardcore type match or a more violent match. So I think it is potential that it would continue to grow over time to maybe 1.5, over the next year. But there's some give and take. If they keep going the route they are now, I think they're going to be comfortably in a 1.1 to maybe a 1.25 rating.
Okay. Going to Floyd on that then?
Well, I guess I had terrible parents because I watched what my parents watched. No matter how violent or whatever it was, I just watched it. I remember, I don't know if y'all know the comedy show called Eddie Murphy Raw. It came out in 1986, right? Or 85, right? I remember it came out on VHS around 86, 87. I'm old. I was 5. You know what I watched that night? All the way. I didn't get any of the jokes, but I watched it from the beginning to the end. And, of course, I watched all the wrestling. Like, I grew up with Ric Flair. If Ric Flair was in a big match, you know what was happening? That man was bleeding. He was going to bleed everywhere. It was going to gush. And it's all right. So, I don't know. I just think wrestling is just one of those family experiences. I think there's much more violent things on TV with blood and stuff, so I don't know. But let's get to the point. I think $1 million's the new bottom. We got a couple of people coming in soon, and I told JR by next year this time, it will be averaging $2 million. I'm calling it right now. Calling my shot. Call me Babe Ruth. I'm pointing to the rafters. $2 million before next year. And I'm like, of course we're going to probably hit it and go under a couple times before then, but I'm thinking steady $2 million before next fall as we head into All Out 2022. I'm calling it now. If I'm wrong, whatever. I'll never bring it up again. But yeah, I like the new base. I'm looking at this week. There was one match. It was a one-match show. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe you can say 2 if you count the Jericho thing. It wasn't a very, dense match like the 3 weeks, the Fighter Fest and all those weeks. They were much more packed shows. This was kind of a lighter show. And it still hit the $1 million. At one point, they hit their highest, one quarter, they hit their highest in the demo ever. And they were like 1.2. So it's just like, I think one is the new bottom. I do think it has everything to do with being back on the road and everything to do with fans being in it. Everything seems big. The show seems bigger than it has been in a long time, and I just think it's attracting an audience. It's becoming must-see TV. People don't want to be spoiled.
I do think that, excuse me, I do think the last few weeks that they've put on shows, they've thrown a match on there that makes it must-see TV, which I think definitely does help the viewership. Like I said, Nick Gage being on, I think, massively helped. The Malachi Black debut for this week, again, also feel like that helped a ton. It's just... It just feels like and again, I think also for the upcoming show that they're having that they plan on having in Queens for the Grand Slam episode, I think that will do well just because people are expecting Daniel Bryan. And it's I think they know how well to reel people in, which I think is going to continue to help the show grow. I do think JR does have a point that, even if you keep the violent deathmatch type or lights out matches to a minimum on Dynamite, specifically on Dynamite, because I think on pay-per-view it's fair game, because when you buy a pay-per-view, it's going to be that it's not going to go by FCC rules and stuff like that because it's on pay-per-view. So you get what you pay for pretty much. And it's fair to say it's when you buy a pay-per-view, it's you're making a commitment to the show that okay, anything these guys put on, we're willing to put up with it. But with Dynamite, I do think, even if you only do it once in a while, you do have a chance of turning people off just because of how violent it is. Which is why I was on the mindset of I love seeing Nick Gage on TV, but again, I don't need to see him on TV ever again because quite frankly, he just doesn't fit. He's so violent and so vicious that I don't see him being sustainable on TV. But I would love to see 1 million be the new base for what you expect AEW to hit for Dynamite. I'm interested more so when Rampage finally hits the air, how that does. And of course, Dynamite plans on switching to TBS later down the road and having TNT be the station for Rampage. So I wonder how much drop off there's going to be from fans as it moves over to TBS, or will there be an increase because of people watching TBS more so than TNT? Who knows? Regardless of the fact, I think this is a good conversation to be having about AEW because it just shows that people are interested, and it's a lot better of just okay, we're doing really poor numbers. We have to put a shot in the arm to be able to keep the show going. But Anyway, I think now we can get into our review and our go-through of AEW Dynamite Homecoming.
They're about to get some steroids. They're about to get some steroids in the arm soon.
Yeah, stick it. Come on.
In my veins.
Oh, the thing on Randy Orton's Titantron, in my veins?
Ah, yes.
The one thing I'll say real quickly, though, it's going to be interesting because if you follow the rumors as we're going, and obviously we've said CM Punk and Daniel Bryan, and Daniel Bryan, you have a direct correlation because people have seen him on WWE television, but it's going to be interesting to see how much of an increase in viewership CM Punk, if he is signed and coming to AEW, because wrestling seven years ago was a different landscape as far as television viewing. Television viewing in itself has declined because of cord cutting and streaming. So like one of the things that Floyd and I talk about off the air is like, basically whatever your number is double it, because that's how many people that cord cutting. For example, I watch Dynamite through the TNT app. I don't watch through normal cable. So I'm really interested to see, like, some people may say, well, if they only increase to 1.5 million or 1.6, but that is a very significant difference because television viewing ratings are not the same as it was 7, 10, 15 years ago. All you have to do is just look at Grey's Anatomy or South Park or Law and Order. Those rating numbers have declined every single year because of cord cutting. So just kind of want to throw it out there as far as like when these things are coming, the viewing may not be what some people may have expected, but that doesn't mean it's a failure because of how television is being viewed today versus in 2013.
Sure, when CM Punk left, the network hadn't even started in WWE. So like they hadn't even switched over to the network by the time Punk was gone. And I would also point to, like, if you're looking at the ratings, like, to fully decide of like, oh wow, did these returns mean anything? I would say check the YouTube viewers. Like, check the view count on the YouTube videos of them returning. That will be your telling point, because that's the thing people are going to be looking towards the most. Because, like, I mean, like, hell, and this isn't a stab. This really isn't. Like, one of the most viewed videos on WWE's YouTube channel is the all-out brawl between John Cena and Brock Lesnar, where the entire locker room separated those two. That got such great view counts that, like, they do it all the time for any feud they possibly can. And hey, AEW does it too. They know that type of image works for two superstars or two wrestlers that are highly like popular and super over. So check the view count, I think, for the YouTube videos if it happens, because I think that will be the huge selling point of, like, did people freak out about this, and how viral did this go? But moving from that, we can talk about AEW Dynamite Homecoming emanating from Daly's Place. And we kicked off the show with Chapter 3 of the 5 Labors of Jericho. The demo god himself, Chris Jericho, rekindling his rivalry from WCW with Juventud Guerrera. And the juice was indeed loose in Jacksonville. I gotta say, now I will be fully frank, because I am a young lad. I am 24. I was exposed to wrestling at a very young age. I have no recollection of it whatsoever. So I did not watch WCW in its heyday. And I gotta say, and I will be fully honest, and this is not a diss either, I have not been fully familiar with Juventud Guerrera's career in WCW or his rivalry with Jericho. And I will be the outsider in terms of, like, not being familiar with that time frame of wrestling to talk about this match. I think this was good, and the crowd was hot from it out the gate just seeing this match. So it was a great starting point for the show. Though I will say, it seemed like Juventud Guerrera, because I don't know what other shows or what other companies he'd wrestled for since then. It seemed like he might have been a little rusty. Nothing like crazy botchy or anything like that, but just like some spots seemed a little bit like either slower in pace, but I guess it's just because we're so used to, like, the idea of cruiserweight, and, like, I would say it's because I'm spoiled by Phoenix that I'm so used to seeing, like, lucha libre wrestlers that are just like ping-ponging off of the ropes so fast that like it's like hard to keep track of, that it was kind of like it was a lot more of a different experience. He didn't do bad at all. He honestly did good, but I think just from being the outsider of it, like, and being spoiled by guys like Phoenix so much, it seemed like at the beginning, like he might have had a little ring rust. Again, that's totally an outside view. I'm probably wrong on it, but the match itself was strong. I loved the finish of him because I knew we forgot to mention previously last week in our episode that Jericho had to do a move off the top rope in order to win the match. That was the other stipulation, but he did it. He won the match with a flying Judas effect off the top rope, which was great, and I loved how that worked out. I honestly thought for a split second they were going to do it where he went for the avalanche Hurricanrana, and then he was going to catch him in the walls and then win by that way, which I thought would be kind of cheating, but regardless, it would work. But the flying Judas effect was a hell of a way to finish the match. And before we get into Labor 4, I will go to JR for his thoughts on this opening match.
I grew up with Juventud Guerrera because I was a big fan of the Monday Night Wars, so I watched Nitro a lot. All those luchadors, Rey Mysterio, Juventud, El Dandy, Silver King, Eddie, and so on and so forth. It was nostalgia. I'm a sucker for nostalgia. With that being said, this is one of those ones where, in my opinion, is just sometimes less is more. And I know they tried so hard because they wanted to spotlight, Juventud Guerrera as a luchador. But my boy's old, and he was trying to hit some of those spots, and Jericho was beating him to some of those spots, especially at the beginning. It was a phenomenal ending. I hate saying that because everybody knows I'm not a big fan of Chris Jericho. That's like my new thing. Everybody knows me for is being anti-Jericho, but man, he hit that Judas effect with the top rope, and I mean it was a brilliant finish. I probably, if I was the one that had the pencil, I'd be maybe do a little bit less high flying and just do more of maybe crossbodies and planchas instead of trying to do some of the spots they were doing to tighten up the match. Because obviously, I mean, when they wrestled, when he was in his prime, we're talking about 23, 24 years ago. And I mean, it's just, he wasn't there, he was a few seconds off. So, but it was great seeing him. Like I said, nostalgia sells. Everybody loves nostalgia.
Well, I actually saw him in Oklahoma in 19 before, pandemic happened. He worked a little local indie show, and he relies more on the fact that he's Juventud Guerrera than, doing the lightning fast cruiserweight moves that he did when he's 90s. It's a lot more character work. Finally, the juice has come to Oklahoma, whether he's playing heel or face or whatever like that. So I think he definitely, in this match, there was some times where it looks like the timing's off. It's been a long time since he's wrestled. I wouldn't call it ring rust. I just call it being comfortable with Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho's probably thinking he needs to work at a faster speed than he had to. And it's like Juventud's probably closer to his speed at this point. That's what I saw just from a lay person's looking. It just looked like Jericho was moving a little too fast for him because he thought he needed to. But I thought the match was good. I thought once he hit the Judas effect, I was like, it being a Lucha Libre match and Chris Jericho being friends with him, I just swore he was going to go up and hit a frog splash. I just like, man, he's going to do a frog splash. I'm like, that's how this match ends, is with a frog splash. But no, he did a flying Judas effect. And I say this to any cruiserweight out there. If you can figure out a way to tighten that up, I would completely steal that move. Because I thought it looked really cool, but in my head, I thought of the ways it could look cooler, and I just thought that was pretty cool. So yeah, I thought the match was good. I wouldn't call it great, but I thought it was good. There was what happened after the match. I was like, yeah, I loved.
And what happened after the match was that Wardlow of the Pinnacle comes out, blindsides Chris Jericho, sends Hoovy with the flying F10, and then proceeds to beat the living hell out of Chris Jericho. MJF standing right in front of the fans on the Daily's Place stage, says Labor 4 is going to be against Wardlow, and the stipulation is going to be someone is going to make sure this match is called fair and square. It's Maxwell Jacob Friedman. So they're making him the special guest referee. So it's like, it's the perfect, like, how the hell does Chris Jericho work his way out of this one? Because MJF is literally the referee, and he will not let Jericho win, because if he wins this match, he gets Max. So that's a pretty good way of just being like, okay, you make it through all this, and then like, nope, I'm the referee. So good luck winning when I'm the referee. So we'll see how he works his way out of that. This, honestly, perfect way to wrap that, like, build up towards the final label, which will be MJF. Such a great way to pull it off. Anybody else got anything?
I was about to say Wardlow looked like a monster. I love Wardlow. He's one of the people that I will tell anyone, if you look at AEW's booking and how you can do perfect booking and how you can build a monster again, the person I would define is Wardlow. Wardlow has pretty much lost every big match he's been in. You know, he lost to Cody in the cage. He lost to Jake in the UFC type or the cage fight. But he's a monster. He takes your head on the top ropes and he throws it into his knee and knocks you out. He hits you with that. What do they call that? It's not an F10. What do they call it? F10?
No, they call it the F10.
Yeah, the F10, and he just fucking throws you. And it's just like, Wardlow can be anybody at any time. Wardlow is kind of used like the WWE used Kane for a while, or the Undertaker. Actually, the Undertaker. When Teddy Long, you would piss Teddy Long off, you'd have to go against the Undertaker. But it's not the ownership that has it, it's MJF. And if you piss MJF off or you cross MJF, you gotta fight the Wardlow, you know, and he's going to crush you. Because at the end, you will, in the end, you will know that you were in a fight that day.
All right.
I was gonna say, I'm a little confused though, because MJF said like he was gonna be the referee, but the graphic, and I'm actually looking at Figure 4 Wrestling Online, is saying that he's managing Wardlow to ensure the referee will call it fair and square.
That's what he kind of said, was that he was going to be accompanying him down the ring and make sure that the match is called fair and square. The commentators were the ones that insinuated he's the referee. So I feel like the way MJF worded it maybe was an issue of like trying to make people understand of what it's going to be. And I don't think they put up a graphic necessarily, or they might have at the end of the show. I might have missed it, but I didn't see a graphic showing that he was going to be just at ringside or he was just going to be like a manager. The idea that I believe they were trying to sell was that he's going to be a referee. Could be wrong. And I could check Twitter again and make sure if I'm wrong on that. But from our perception, he's the referee for the next match. But anyway, I'll quickly move us on to a couple backstage segments. First up, Lucha Brothers backstage. No Pac saying his transportation to the arena was canceled by someone. We wonder who it was. And Andrade El Idolo and Chavo come out and interrupt, trying to be like, join us. They say no. Phoenix and Penta says that the Lucha Bros will work for no one and just walk away. And Chavo kind of comes like, they'll come around. They'll come around. And then we had another backstage segment with the Dark Order with Hangman showing up, basically trying to grab his drink and get out of there as quickly as possible. And he also apologized to the Dark Order, being like, look, I'm sorry, guys. Like, I got to deal with the Elite right now. I'm sorry I cost you guys your title matches. I got to deal with this. And they're like, we got your back, man. And they're like, no. Listen, I have to do this myself. Right now, I think it's best we go our separate ways. I love you guys. We're friends. But for right now, I think we need to be done. And everyone's kind of like, no. And then, like, Evil Uno and Evil Uno and Stu Grayson are like, you know what? That's what he wants. We got to respect that, guys. So that would lead into what we would see later that night. But so we're kind of seeing a little bit of like what they're trying to do with this new change in motion for the whole Hangman and Dark Order versus the Elite storyline going forward. Anybody got anything to say about these two, or should we move on?
Oh, we can move on.
All right. Very quickly, we move to the trios match where Daniel Garcia and 2.0, which consists of Matt Lee and Jeff Parker, making their Dynamite debut, called out 3 of the top guys in AEW at this point in time: Darby Allin, Eddie Kingston, and Jon Moxley. So they asked to die, is what they asked to do. So, I mean, that's one hell of a way to get yourself on TV. And this, I will say, I especially love the point where Matt Lee gets kind of starstruck by Sting being outside, and then Darby just flies like back first into him and slams into him as he flies into the barricade. This was a match to get the crowd hype with just like some of the best and top guys in AEW playing the hits against these, for lack of a better term, jobbers, and proceed to just hit all these high spots, look great as the finish of Moxley hitting the paradigm shift and then quickly tagging in Darby to hit the coffin drop. Got the crowd crazy hyped. I will say, shout out to my boys at Rooster Teeth, some of my favorite YouTubers. They did Darby's animated Titantron graphic, which is kind of like the old school, like cartoonish, if you want to call it like creepy Mickey Mouse, but also maybe bendy in the Ink Machine style of animation. Shout out to them for doing that, because that's freaking cool. And I found out about that through them tweeting about it, because it was a really nice, I guess, differentiating from his normal entrance video. But this was just a nice little short, quick trios match with a lot of high spots from Eddie, Moxley, Darby, all 3 of them. So over, beating up these 3. So I don't think, do you guys have got anything to say about this?
No, if I'm gonna jump in, you're supposed to go first, right, JR, on these?
But I'll just say that I loved Eddie Kingston because he seemed like a kid in a candy store, man. He was so happy in there.
Yeah, he had the biggest smile on his face, and you can see he just kept grabbing Sting, and Sting wasn't expecting it. And there's this picture where they like froze Sting, and he has this weird looking face, and because Eddie just was just happy to be in there with Sting. That was great. Garcia, first time I saw Garcia wrestle was WrestleMania weekend at, I think it was, I don't know if it was a GCW show. It was a show during WrestleMania weekend, and I thought he was really good. In this match. I think Everrise is very entertaining. One of the two people I was very shocked that when they were released from the NXT, because they are very good at sports entertainment. Like, they're very entertaining people, and they don't have to say, like a lot. They do it with their expressions. It's very physical and everything. Like, he's in the middle ring. He's like, "You want to take a swing at me?" And it's just so funny because he has an energy about it. I thought this was a very entertaining match. A great way to introduce 3 new characters. I don't know if they didn't get the graphic yet, so they're obviously not signed, but it was kind of cool, and it was kind of cool to see them on the show, and they dressed alike, which I'm always down for in the 6-man.
Yeah. And I will also say, I think I saw when Eddie and Jon Moxley came out, Eddie had a nice little interaction with a little kid, which I thought was really cute. We then had a backstage segment with the Elite, once again celebrating how Hangman and the Dark Order cannot go after the AEW titles. And they were continuing to do their basketball thing, playing off of the Space Jam intro from last week. And also kind of put out there that the Dark Order would be trying to get the Good Brothers Impact Tag Team Championships. So there's continuation with the Elite versus Dark Order, with them going after those titles, and that will be happening next week. And they also mocked about how there is nobody left for the Elite to challenge, nobody for them to defend their titles against. So they should just retire as champions, hang their banners in the rafters, and at this point just put the titles in their graves with them because they will die with those championships. So bragging on how they beat basically the best of the best. There's no one left for them to beat. And this time they're serious because they shut down the Dark Order, who would normally shut them up every time, and Hangman and Page. That quick little backstage segment out of the way, we moved on to Christian Cage versus The Blade in singles competition. Last week, The Blade attacked Christian Cage after a match with Brass Knuckles. This was him getting revenge. And this was a quick little singles match. I gotta say, it's building up Christian getting more wins, and it moved him up to get a win to put him as the number one contender for the World Championship. Very excited about that because, I mean, that's what they were positioning Christian to do when he got into AEW. And I think the idea of Christian going after the AEW World title, especially with Kenny Omega, I think could be a great little, clash of wrestling styles, I feel like. And I think Christian is very talented to the point where I would expect him to go for a title. And I think would be a fun little match for Kenny to really kind of get sweating a little bit. But I didn't really have a ton to say in this match. I thought it was good, but when I think about it, there wasn't a ton for me to really latch on to and be like, that was really freaking cool. The match finished with Christian hitting the spear as Blade tried to sneakily get his brass knucks as the referee was distracted, trying to put the turnbuckle pad back on that he was trying to rip off. He got speared. That was the end of the match. I really like Christian. I say consistently that he's massively underrated. And I think the Blade is a good, solid, typical heel that you would get in wrestling. But I didn't have much to draw from on this match. Nothing really kind of rung with me. And I think it's building towards something that I'm interested in. Besides the fact there wasn't really much that I could hold on to from this match that was really memorable. It was good, but nothing really too memorable about it, honestly, for me. JR, though, thoughts on this match?
I think you said it perfectly. It's building Christian Cage up and giving him more wins to make him a viable contender against AEW champion Kenny Omega. And I'll leave it at that.
My big problem is he beat an unranked person to move up in ranking. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that is a thing.
I mean, has the Butcher won a singles match other than on Dark? You know what I mean? And you can rack up a lot of wins on Dark, but I've seen him rack up wins on Dark, but the Butcher hasn't beat anybody. And then, and honestly, Christian hasn't beat anybody. He hasn't beat a ranked wrestler yet, and somehow he's the number one contender. I know rankings are just used to push the storyline, but I do hold people to a standard of make it make sense. So that, the whole Christian thing doesn't make sense. The match was good. It was a solid pro wrestling match. Sometimes you just need a solid pro wrestling match in the show. The idea of Christian going all out as the main event, I'm only okay with it because, technically Punk will apparently be in there by that. And I think the draws will come from CM Punk, but I think it's more of, I would not be shocked if on Wednesday that they announce Christian challenges him and they do Kenny Omega and Christian as the main event at Rampage. I wouldn't. Yeah. I would not, in the one in Pittsburgh, I would not be shocked if that is the thing. Or they announce Kenny Omega Christian as the main event of Rampage on August 20th. Something like that. It doesn't seem like the main event of a show, a pay-per-view that you want to draw a lot of people to call in. Because even though Christian is a name in the WWE, even though he's undefeated, I don't think you've built him up enough. I think he needs a win against Hangman, Cody, Jungle Boy. I think he needs a bigger name to Orange Cassidy to really be a number one contender. He hasn't really beat anyone.
Yeah, I could believe that, honestly. I think the thing that they used to justify the the Blade being the guy that put him over the top for the rankings was that because he's been on TV for so many weeks. We've seen him a ton, so that means he's like recognizable, I guess, of like somebody that we've seen week by week. I do think that, yes, like winning a match, I think that's the issue, is that most of the guys that are in the tops of the rankings that aren't MJF are baby faces. And I think that's just the issue with Christian, is that he's a baby face moving up the rankings, and most of the male top rankings are baby faces. I think maybe Ty Dillinger could have been a decent one, I think. But again, like, I don't think...
Did you call him Ty Dillinger?
Shit, Sean Spears. Damn it. Sorry.
No, it was more funny than anything.
Yeah, it slips sometimes. Sorry, I'm a mark.
I was just going to say that the only time the Blade has gotten a win on AEW Dynamite was a multi-man match. Matt Hardy, Private Party, and Butcher and Blade defeat Bear Country and Jurassic Express back on St. Patrick's Day Slam in March. And he has not have a singles AEW Dynamite win at all this year, or probably not even last year either, to be honest with you. And don't get me started. I already told you I don't agree with rankings in pro wrestling. I think it's silly.
Yeah, honestly, it's like at this point, like besides on the rankings, like Powerhouse Hobbs was the only one that was recently on the rankings that was like a heel. That's not the champions of the division. So, like, I mean, maybe him, but like again, they're off doing stuff with Team Taz and Brian Cage, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, it's like.
If Kenny Omega said, "Who have you beat?" What would Christian's reply be?
Matt Hardy, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, it's like no.
Yeah, but again, like I like where it's going. How they're getting there is kind of But if where we're going to is worth it, then it really doesn't necessarily matter. Because again, the build to the Young Bucks and FTR's first match could have been better. But the match was so good that I don't care. So that's how it goes sometimes.
Yeah, and they could have fixed it by Christian doing something to piss Kenny Omega off, where Kenny challenged Christian, and then I would have been okay with it, you know. But it's just the fact that he
himself up the rankings is a little bit more of a difficult thing to get over.
Yeah, it's like he earned the shot. And I'm like, well, if he's earned this shot. Then, what is it? Colton Gunn, who has a better record than Christian, has earned his shot too. When does he get his title shot?
Yeah, it's the double-edged sword that you play with rankings in pro wrestling, I guess.
I was gonna say it's interesting because I'm looking at Christian Cage. So since he's been in Dynamite or AEW, he's defeated Kazarian, Hobbs, Matt Sydal, Angelico, and Matt Hardy. And now the Blade in singles competition.
Yeah. Which, I mean, like, yeah, he could say he beat Powerhouse Hobbs before he made it onto the rankings, though.
Yeah, technically, yeah. He got a win against Hobbs, but it's just...
So I think if you go by technicalities, I think it's just because recency bias, it doesn't feel like he's done so much to get there. But again, the rankings are weird right now where it's like mostly baby faces in the top 5.
Absolutely.
So, regardless, like, again, if the match is good, which I'm sure it will be because Christian's dope and Kenny Omega is incredible, then I won't necessarily care. But we're just in that point right now where this is all we have to latch onto right now. So, forgive us if we're being overly critical on this, but that's just kind of all we got to play with. And the match itself was just a match.
That's what I was going to say right now, Austin. I'm sorry to cut you off, but that's kind of this whole situation between Kenny and Hangman, and now Kenny kind of going with Cage. I don't want to. It just seems like, for lack of a better word, like convoluted booking, because it's like, why did you go this way, but now you're switching this way?
It's because
then the match with Kenny versus Christian Cage. I actually do agree with you, Floyd. I think it's potentially maybe on TV, and to get Rampage over, especially in the time slot, I think having Kenny Omega defend the title on a future Rampage, especially that one United Center, that would be like a really big move to make. And I agree with that, especially because of Christian Cage being the name from his WWE days. But then I go back long term, okay, or not even long term, but literally 2 weeks later, where does that leave Kenny Omega for All Out if they go against with Cage at Rampage? And if they do have a match at All Out, especially when, I know we allow ourselves to read the news or read rumors. Well, even how good of a match it would potentially be, we know it's going to be hashtag and still AEW World Champion Kenny Omega. That's my whole issue with this whole Theo Christian and this whole, booking situation with Hangman and Kenny.
Yeah, and I think it really is just because these two massive talent options kind of fell to them, and they were like, well, let's offer them something. It worked out in their favor, and now they're just like, well, we got to do something now, and kind of what they had planned kind of had to be changed around. And when you're planned, it's very rare where your plan, when you have to alter your plan, does it ever feel fully natural? And I think that's the issue, is just this is the first time with AEW that things kind of feel like they're a little bit off rails and we don't fully know where we're going. And we're normally kind of yes, okay, we know where we're going. We're excited for it. It's going to be fun. We're going to be excited with everything that builds toward. But now we're just in this weird kind of period where leading into All Out, leading into the debut of Rampage, we don't know where a lot of stuff is going, because there's a lot of Schrodinger's wrestling stuff with CM Punk and Daniel Bryan and all these other things. And we'll talk about it later. There was another wave of releases that recently happened with WWE. There's so much going on that it's hard to kind of even it's very chaotic. And I think at one hand, that's exciting. At the other hand, it's kind of well, hang on. I was with you, but then I wasn't. And then I don't know. I think next week, I think should be a lot more of a clarity, considering that we'll get the debut of Rampage and we'll get also another episode of Dynamite to lead into more stuff. So hopefully by next week, with certain stuff leading with the AEW World Title and other storylines, things kind of start coming together. But I feel we'll quickly move on to this, since we've talked about this a good amount. We had Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, with an in-ring interview building up towards Rampage's debut in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And she has a challenger for the AEW Women's Championship, and it is Red Velvet. Now, this, I think, can be significantly better than the starter that was her first defense with Nyla Rose, which I don't think was bad. It just was kind of underwhelming, considering how over her title win was. I think Red Velvet is a step up, and considering it is in her hometown, no, there was no way you were going to have a title match with her where she wasn't going to be overwhelmingly cheered. So honestly, best of Red Velvet to take it. The interaction, the promo was great. I loved how Britt Baker just was like, bro, I beat your ass in 3 minutes. And you're asking for a title shot? What the hell are you doing? Regardless, she acquiesced, and now we get the debut of Rampage in Pittsburgh. Britt Baker versus Red Velvet, and Britt beat up Red Velvet after a little shoving match, and then she beat up Red Velvet to get heat. And yeah, she's going to get a hometown ovation. It's going to be, honestly, I think the crowd's just going to be behind it, just because it's going to build up the match because it's her hometown and because it's Britt Baker. So I feel like that's a good follow-up after the slightly underwhelming first title defense. I think this will be significantly better. But JR, though, thoughts on this little in-ring confrontation and what we're getting next week on Rampage?
No, I mean, obviously being in the hometown of Britt Baker, the one thing I've said is that with Britt Baker, I feel like because of how much she has improved as a heel as far as wrestling in AEW, because I just don't think her being a babyface was working. But on a very grand comparison, she basically became the Stone Cold Steve Austin of if you're going to say somebody that's comparable to Stone Cold Steve Austin in the sense of somebody that was a heel that got over as a babyface, that's Britt Baker. People like love her, and they're trying to like, I think, let her stay heel, and that's just not gonna work because she's too cool and she's too badass as with her mic skills and her just natural charisma that people love her. And to add to that, she's going into Pittsburgh. AEW dropped a new AEW Britsburg shirt for her. So it's like, how are you going to expect her to get any heat in her hometown when you're doing these things? Velvet's a great superstar, great wrestler, excuse me. I've really just grown to like her abilities in the ring. I think they would complement each other very well. So I look forward to this. And it's obviously the whole thing's going to continue to spotlight Britt Baker as a as their AEW Women's Champion.
All right, Floyd.
Yeah, it's going to be impossible. I mean, I would almost flip it. I think at some point, Velvet's going to have to kind of play the heel in this match. Britt's not going to be a heel in Pittsburgh. I don't care what she does. She can come out and shoot Red Velvet and they cheer.
Nope. It ain't happening.
Yeah, so it's just like, I think I truly believe Red Velvet should have been her first contender. It makes more sense. This is a good get to the next person contender. I love it. They're both, around the same size, athletic, and it's just like the limitations that come in a match with Nyla, you aren't going to get it with Red Velvet. Red Velvet, she proves when she's put in a big spot, she can show up like she did with the Cody match against Shaq and Jade Cargill. Everybody who came out of that match like, man, I didn't know Red Velvet could do that. She's got that energy on the promo, that sass. I really enjoyed it. I just thought I was just really excited about that being the match. And all I could think is like, man, this should have been the first match. But she gets the big spot on Rampage, so she gets even another chance to step up.
Yeah, honestly, and regardless of the fact that she will get no heel reaction whatsoever, like, again, Red Velvet's not in a position where she's like will hurt consistently. Like it'll hurt her considerably from the reaction from the crowd. I think she'll be fine regardless because we haven't seen a ton of her, and like she could build back the momentum very easily if they continue to push her, if that's what they decide to do. And like honestly, I think Britt just needs a title defense with a lot of crowd response behind it to really just like keep that title reign going, because it's still people love Britt. But to make the title reign significant, I think having a defense with a hot crowd will save that for no, like if people are thinking it's not really picking up any steam, this will save it for them. We then had another backstage segment with Chavo Guerrero and Andrade El Idolo. Chavo brought Andrade Fuego. And he was like, Fuego, hey, man, like we got a job for you. Like you're here. We need you to shine El Idolo's shoes. And he's like, you did not promise me that. That is not what you told me. And they're like, you shine his fucking shoes. Andrade gets mad, attacks Fuego, rams him into like this rams him into the wall, and then just proceed to yell like, Lucha Bros, you don't come with us, this will happen to you. So easy way to get heat, attack Fuego, you bastards. Why would you do such a thing? So there's heel heat for you. They attacked Fuego, got a response. How dare they attack him and make him shine shoes? Those monsters. So, you guys got anything to say on this little segment?
No, I'll just say, though, is that due to Floyd Johnson, who loves himself some Fuego del Sol, and every time I talk to him, he puts over Fuego, I'm becoming a Fuego fan, and it drives me crazy because I'm literally not trying to buy merch, and he was doing on high spot auctions. And he was selling like turnbuckle pads, auctions, and he had replica mask. And I was like, Floyd, stop talking about Fuego because I'm gonna start buying stuff, and I'm not trying to buy anything. We got trips coming up. I know this was last week, but man, could he take an ass whooping? Because when Malachi Black hit him with that black mask, oh my god, I was like, that is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. That took it like a champ.
He did. He really did.
What I have to say is Tony Khan, I don't know if this is fortunate for Fuego or unfortunate. He is getting TV time. He is on Dynamite. He's realized the secret button. You know how to make someone get hated? beat up Fuego.
Yeah, Fuego's everyone's friend. No one wants to see Fuego
no one wants Fuego to get hurt. He's on that level of untouchable right now. And it's like, you're in Jacksonville, and honestly, I don't think anybody's more over in Jacksonville than Fuego del Sol. And yeah, that just like, if you were kind of like, oh, I kind of like Andrade, maybe not. Yeah, he hit Fuego. He's the dick now. We hate him now. Fuego, Oklahoma's own Fuego del Sol. I like to say that because, that's where he started. But yeah, he is, it's just, he's like a heat magnet. He's just like, if you beat him up, you get heat. TK's figured that out. So you're going to see probably a lot of your bigger heels beating up Fuego del Sol at some point. I thought the segment did what it was supposed to do. Maybe we get a Fuego versus Andrade match on Dynamite, or maybe we get it on Darker Elevation. I think it's going to happen either one. But again, Fuego's wrestling, so that makes me happy.
That makes me happy as well.
I was going to say to add, if they want to go this route, because at the end of the day, history always repeats itself in a very similar fashion, like ECW did with Mikey Whipwreck. They could keep doing this with Fuego, and eventually Fuego can mess around and become the first person to be the guy to be Miro for the TNT champion, and everybody would fucking pop. But that's what they did with you. He was getting his ass whooped every single time on ECW television. Then somehow, some way, he ended up becoming like the ECW champion.
Hey, Leon Ruff on NXT. I was just saying another example.
Or he could be AEW's version of Cheeseburger.
Yes. But I love Fuego, man, and he's a really good worker. So I like them getting him matches, and as long as he's on TV, I'm happy for him.
All right. We then had a small video package. Hey, everyone, America's Top Team Dan Lambert's back. And he talked about how he got attacked by Lance Archer on that episode of Dynamite. And he's like, you know what? I haven't forgotten that. I will be back next week. Archer's going to have to pay up, and I will have backup with me. So I will leave this at this. Do we know, or do we have any thoughts on who this backup will be?
I will say, first of all, Dan Lambert, if for those of you who are not familiar with him, he did great work in Impact. He did some good work with MLW. He is like, people talk about like outsiders. He is a legitimate fan of professional wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
He has, so many like original wrestling belts from the territory areas. He cuts a heel promo like a throwback heel manager would, like in the essence of Bobby Heenan would. He can get that what you need. As far as backup, man, like it's hard because I do know that he has King Mo Lawal, former MMA light heavyweight champion in Strikeforce, has wrestled in MLW, was actually just at Battle Riot, and was at one point was a part of Impact Wrestling. I know he's like they've done stuff with him in AKA American Top Team, so it could be King Mo, but it's just kind of hard because I don't know if they're gonna put him with like a new talent or an AEW talent, or if it would be somebody like King Mo since he has that background. I'll tell you, if they really want to get heat, they'll go get the UFC #1 contender, Colby Covington, to come with Sam Lambert, come to AEW.
Or get Ronda Rousey. If you want to get heat, get Ronda Rousey, since she just doesn't like wrestling fans.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to accept when you're not a draw. It really is. It really is. I'm like, and you can be on ESPN, but people weren't turning on the TV to see you, and it's hard for her to accept. And I get it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, it is what it is. It's just nobody. I mean, hey, there was a time Ronda Rousey was the badass woman of the world, and she had never lost. And I think if she would have come in the WWE and then, yes, I think she would have drew big numbers. But after she got mollywopped by Amanda Nunes, it was like, okay, you're not the baddest woman in the world anymore. What are we tuning in to see now? So I don't know. I had this thought when she joined the WWE. I just didn't think it was going to make that big a difference. And it just seems like wrestling fans, she's drunk the Kool-Aid that wrestling fans are the problem and not not having entertaining television. But I'm going to get past this. I love Dan Levert. I saw his act in Impact, and I just think it's really great. He just has this natural punchable face, and then he has the cadence down of a heel, and he knows how to talk, and it just works.
Have you been to Express lately? People can't get enough of their clothes. They're like instant confidence boosters. The jeans come in a temp control fabric that keeps you comfortable no matter the weather. And the t-shirts, hands down, they'll feel like they're made of the softest fabric you've ever worn. And get this, the suits have stretch and look sharp. Like, what? How do they do that? Everyone's raving about the newest looks from Express. Just check out the 5-star reviews. See for yourself and shop the latest at express.com and in stores.
Works. It's like you could have seen him in MLW and seen him in Impact, and it still works in AEW because he is really good at this. So it's a traveling act. It works where it goes. I'm very excited to see who he brings with him.
Any thoughts on who he will bring with him?
See, I don't know. I don't know because I've heard, and because he's in America's Top Team, and I don't know any of those people that are crossover. But I've heard Cain Velasquez is getting back into pro wrestling, and that would be pretty cool.
Cain Velasquez making a jump from when he had a small stint in WWE to AEW. Interesting.
He jobbed to Brock Lesnar.
He jobbed to Brock Lesnar.
Could have got a big check to job to Brock Lesnar and bounced.
All right. Maybe he won't do that here. Who knows? But I have no idea, honestly. And I gave him crap, but Dan Lambert knows what the hell he's doing. I just gave him crap just because his promo, people were just like, why the fuck is this dude here? And it was just funny to me. But anyway, we then had an interview with Hangman Adam Page in the ring, getting interrupted very quickly by the Elite. And Hangman was like, Matt, Nick, I've needed to say something to you for a while. Kenny Omega is like, oh, you're trying to make new friends. You're trying to take my title. And are you trying to rejoin the Elite? And Hangman goes, that is the last thing I'm trying to do. And Kenny goes on and on being like, we've thought about forgiving you. We've thought about getting past it. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, you don't fit here because no matter what, even if you're a cowboy, the Elite has no room for losers. Kind of odd how Brandon Cutler's there, but I get it, young boy. And it's their little oh, hey, forget it. He's not actually in the Elite. But regardless, he gets under Hangman's skin. Hangman slaps Kenny Omega. The Elite then gangs up on him and hits Hangman with the Gallows and Anderson hit him with the Magic Killer. The Dark Order comes out to save him as they normally do. Evil Uno and Grayson was like, no, we told him we wouldn't get in the middle of his thing. We're not going to get in the middle of his thing. So they just beat the living shit out of Hangman. Even Frankie Kazarian, the Elite Hunter, comes to try to stop it, and he's still outnumbered. And the AEW World title slammed right in the head of Hangman. Kenny screaming, this is the closest you will ever get. So big heel heat for the Elite as they continue to just beat up on Hangman. And Dark Order now kind of just, thanks to Evil Uno and Grayson, they're like, he told us not to help him. We will not help him. And they're sticking to their guns on that. So it's Hangman seeming like he's got to go kind of again on another hero's journey just to get back to where he wanted to be. And it seemed like while we thought we were getting closer to where we were eventually going to pay off to, which was Hangman being AEW World Champion, because of extenuating circumstances, we have to wait. So Hangman's going to get a little bit more time to work his way back up to that and really kind of find himself some more, which if we give more in-depth mental insight to Hangman, honestly, I think that would be worth the wait still, because I think the best part about Hangman is just how much of a toll mentally his mind has gone on, being just never being able to clinch what he wants, having chances but not being able to get it. So I think this gives AEW a lot of opportunities to just really kind of dive into Hangman's mental more. So I hope they do that, honestly. But JR, you got any thoughts on this little segment?
I'm just going to be honest, and this is one man's opinion. I don't like what they did, and I get it. Like, I understand. Like, I've heard of all like the arguments of why they did what they did, and potentially pulled it back. You know, if they were going to go with Hangman versus, you know, Kenya, maybe at All Out, and why they're not doing that, they're going a different direction. I honestly think, in my estimation, this is not what they did. Isn't good, and potentially could have affect Hangman negatively in the future, to where, and I'll put it this way, if the rumors are true, I feel, especially after this week, people are going to want to see, I want to see Kenny Omega versus Malachi Black for the AEW Championship. I want to see Kenny Omega versus Daniel Bryan for the AEW Championship. I want to see Kenny Omega versus CM Punk for the AEW Championship. When does Hangman get his shot at redemption against Hangman? Because, when does Hangman get his shot at redemption against Kenny Omega? And you essentially, you know, he had his shot at All Out 2019. He lost it. He had his number one contender match at Full Gear. He lost it. Like, he had this shot and he lost it. He's like almost, if you combine, he's like 0-3 in championship opportunities. And as AEW continues to grow the roster with bigger stars, I just feel like that time is never going to come for Hangman. And now that you didn't pull the trigger again, I think like people, especially with bigger names, are going to be ready to move on. Now, AEW's audience is very unique and different than any other wrestling audience that I've ever, you know, been around. So maybe they don't. I just don't like what they did. I just feel like you completely killed them. You know, if it was for personal reasons, because I've heard that narrative as well. Like, I get why you're doing that, because he wants time off. But I just think the whole getting to this point, they should have just moved forward with it. And if he wasn't going to even, you know, that wasn't even the point, was to get him a championship opportunity because he was going to leave for personal reasons, then they completely bumbled everything from the beginning on this. The one thing I've said consistently for a long time was I felt that the AEW championship, you know, what they've done with it as far as the storylines around that, whether it was, you know, Jericho versus Hangman in the beginning, Jericho versus Cody, Jericho versus Moxley, up until, you know, with Kenny Omega, but I feel like that they've been consistent. They've done a great job executing storylines. This one, I just think, has been a complete failure, and I don't like it. I just think that it's going to end up not working out in the long run, but only time will tell.
Okay. You know, me and JR have had this exact conversation offline, and I just think it comes from a general lack of, you know, patience in people younger than me. It's just
2 years.
I mean, it's just a lack of patience. I'm like, I think Hangman has the most relatable storyline ever. As a person that has struggled with weight his whole life and has tried to lose weight and failed, and tried to lose weight and failed, and tried to lose weight and failed. Do you know what I identify more with in this storyline than anything? Someone that keeps trying and coming up short. Hangman, it's like he has to win the title now. I need him to win the title. I'm begging for him to win the title. And the thing is, you have after September 1st or September 5th at All Out, you then have October, then you have Full Gear, then you have December. It's like wrestling's not gonna stop because he didn't get this one title shot. Let's just say we get Kenny Omega and Punk, Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson. You're going to need another match. You know, it's not like the story's going to end with Kenny Omega. You're going to need more wrestling. This is a long haul situation. Hangman's I think he just turned 30 or 29, so he's still young. You know, he can wait and get it and then have a significant title reign where he beats everybody or something like that. There's just a long time to go. So I'm never going to say they killed Hangman because, I mean, honestly, he never, you know, even in the thing, it ended up 3-on-1 and he lost, you know, 3-on-1 to literally the world champion and the tag team champions. It was a loss, but it was an acceptable loss. And they showed something, someone broke down the screenshot, is when Hangman stumbled in and sits his beer down, he actually, you know, leaves a disc on the table. So I think for the people not paying attention, that's a little a little Easter egg for what might happen in the future. Evil Uno and Stu knew what he wanted, and they stuck to the plan. So it can be a bigger thing. And I just think I just saw it with Naito. I did. I just saw it with Naito in New Japan. He lost. He kept getting close, and he kept losing. And then he became the double champion at one night. And it was just an amazing moment for New Japan. And no one's like, man, that took too long. Everybody's like, man, that was perfect. Gato did a great job just waiting and waiting. He made us need it. And that's what they're doing with Hangman. So...
And I think also, too, if I'll just kind of put another point on this before we move on, I think the anger would be more fear. People would be more angry, I think, as opposed to like Hangman not getting his shot right now against Kenny Omega for the world title. I think they'd be more angry if he got the championship, but then got overshadowed and then lost the title to an incoming either CM Punk or Daniel Bryan or another guy they recently brought in. That would piss people off so much more. And I think they knew that when they bring these guys in, they can't not be around the world title picture because of who they are and how big of a draw they are. And they didn't want to hurt Hangman's stock by having him be the champion that has to lose it. To be frank, Kenny Omega is considered to be the greatest wrestler of all time. And him losing the title against either of these people, whether or not that's what they decide to do, and that's why they decided to switch gears, that is not going to cause Kenny Omega's stock to fall because Kenny Omega has been doing some of the best heel work he's done in a very long time, and he's still considered the best wrestler in the world. He lost to Okada multiple times, and people still didn't care. So him losing to a guy like Daniel Bryan or CM Punk will not hurt Kenny Omega. So I think they realize the pros of having Hangman wait for his shot much way outweigh the pros of him getting the title but then losing it to incoming talent. So that's what I would put towards as my 2 cents on this on the thing.
This is why I told Floyd, because due to some family obligations, I wasn't here last week. I said if we had this conversation last week, the show would be 4 hours and be me going back and forth with Floyd about this, because it literally because he said that, because he always tells you patience. I'm like, it's been 2 years since he lost his first opportunity. I think that's been enough patience. I said,
but again, Hangman wasn't crazy over back then, though.
Well, I mean, the whole thing was the story's been building up for 2 years.
Yeah, let's go for 3.
No, well, I'm just saying, I'm gonna I'll give you, you say Naito. The one thing I'll say, Naito was already champion in 2016, so it's a little bit different comparison. But the one I'll give a comparison though is, and this is even a shorter time frame than 2 years, and you gotta go way back into 1993, was Lex Luger came to WWF and they turned him babyface, and he was going to be like their next Hogan. He was going to be Yokozuna, and they're like, well, we don't think the timing's ready for it. So they didn't pull the trigger. Then they end up saying, well, you know what? Bret Hart got hot again, so we're going to put the belt on Bret Hart instead of Lex Luger. And then eventually, like, well, you know what? We like Diesel because Diesel's getting over as being, Big Daddy Cool, so we're going to put the belt on him. And and whether you can say it's my generation or not, that's fine, but it's still going to hold true, is that people may say, and I'm not saying that they killed Hangman, because they did everything to essentially show that, it took 18 people to murder him on that Dynamite. But if you get to a situation where somebody doesn't overcome the struggles after a certain period of time, and then as you bring in new talent, people are going to move on to the next flavor of the month, if you will. And especially with the names like Daniel Bryan and CM Punk, I think there's going to be that call that people are going to say, hey, maybe they should get an opportunity. Because, and the reason I say that is the rumor was like, well, not right now, but maybe a Full Gear because it's Hangman's pay-per-view. Okay, well, it's like, you don't think people are going to be calling to see CM Punk versus Kenny Omega for the AEW World Championship instead?
Yeah, and CM Punk can lose.
And, I mean, that's fine, but
and then you go to the next guy, and then they can lose, and then you go to the next guy.
When you go to that situation though, where it's like, okay, when are you going to pull the trigger on Hangman before you get to a point where other people are getting built up and people have already got tired of Hangman because he has not gotten over.
See, and that's the whole thing. People are not going to get tired of Hangman because he's the Hangman. He's the biggest. They have made him like really one of the biggest stars in AEW. He is so over. When that music hits, oh my God, cowboy shit. When he takes this time off and he comes back, oh my God, I would love to be in that crowd when that happens.
Yeah, you're right. It sounds like they should have made him champion All Out. I agree with you.
Okay.
No,
To prevent this from going on and again like taking over the entire show because we've only got 2 matches left. Let's quickly move to the TNT title match where we have God's favorite champion, the Redeemer Miro versus Big Shotty Lee Johnson of the Nightmare Family. This is a really good match. Great TNT match. Miro again looks like a monster. Lee Johnson got some really good spots in there and had multiple opportunities where it looked like he gave Miro a little bit more than he was expecting. Miro's title reign with the TNT title has been godly. It's been great. I've loved how much Miro's just like completely just reshaped the title and really made it his own. All the way down to like having the title just be completely look different. This is another great title defense. I have nothing bad to say about this. Lee Johnson, I think, is great. I think I will post this to a question to you guys since this conversation did get brought up recently online about AEW's top talent not being diverse enough since we had Lee Johnson in this match because there was a lot of conversations of how like the top people in AEW are all white people. So I want, and I know Floyd actually pointed this out, was like, well, actually I saw not Floyd, but Wrestling with Regret point this out as well and be like, this is a fair point. So I guess I'll toss this to you guys since the match itself I think was strong and didn't really have anything else nearly much to talk about. But do you guys think that AEW has shown itself, like at least in their high marquee talent, that they're not diverse enough? Because we've got people like Sonny Kiss and Nyla Rose, and of course Jade Cargill as well in terms of African American talent, and there's Lee Johnson, Scorpio Sky. There is like talent on the roster, but if you look towards the top of the division, mostly white people. Do you guys have any thoughts on that conversation?
I'll let you start, Floyd.
Okay, I do have thoughts. I think, unfortunately for AEW, its timing and luck has had a lot to do with this. They started, and a lot of the big named, because let's call it what it is. This is not a diversity issue. This is a black person issue. They're saying, the guy was saying there's not enough black people. It's not diversity. Because they have the Lucha Bros. Sammy Guevara and Proud and Powerful are always involved in something big. They're part of the greatest faction in the inner circle in AEW history. They've got nothing but TV time, right? So you looking at it, Andrade's built as a star, and he's brought in with Chavo, Vicky Guerrera, Nyla Rose, Jay Cargill's undefeated and is treated like the biggest star. I could go on. Private Party beat Young Bucks in. I could go on and on, but this is about black singles wrestlers. Unfortunately, there was, in the time of AEW, and this is not me being apologized because I've been saying this since the beginning, there was no black Adam Page, right? People that could fill that role, Swerve Scott, right? Maybe Cedric Alexander, maybe Keith Lee. You know, I'm going through the list. They all have something in common. They were already signed to the WWE. So you can't make this invisible person that, there's just not these over talented black men just sitting out there just waiting to be pushed. None of these people were household names. Now, I'm not saying that there's no talented black men out there. I imagine there's a lot in the indies. But I'm talking about on the level of already being over, it just wasn't there. So when I look at this, they did try to sign Leo Rush. That would have been a significant African-American signing. A significant single star. That didn't work out. It's like they've had extremely bad luck with the talent available. And Scorpio Sky, he has main evented AEW match with Chris Jericho, and he was part of the first tag team champions ever. Like I said, I'm a big on patience. How many times do I say, how much have I said? I said this about the women's division. I said this. Equality, in my opinion, is just not forcing something down. It's letting them naturally grow and become superstars on their own and then getting them in there. When somebody becomes available, we got Will Hobbs in the pipeline. Lee Johnson just had a great match with Miro. Scorpio Sky is one of those people you can kind of turn him on and off at any time. It's coming. You just gotta wait. It's just everybody wants everything right now, and it's just you don't get everything right now. It's not how it works.
Okay. Just figured that was a conversation to have, since that was thrown out there. JR, do you got anything to say on Floyd's point?
The thing I work in a program that deals specifically with diversity and inclusiveness. I've sat on committees about diversity and inclusiveness. Met with students who are Hispanic and African American and LGBTQ. One thing I've noticed is I think people have a lot of different definitions of what's diverse and what's inclusive. One of the things I actually have it on my Twitter page is that it says diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is actually being asked to dance. And there's another like a picture that's like diversity is like puzzle pieces, but inclusion is actually being part of the actual puzzle. And the thing about AEW, I will say, to kind of, in some ways, they opened up like this, proverbial Pandora's box because of how the company started and the rhetoric they were using about, we're going to be a diverse company and the signings they were doing. And then they started, and Floyd's right, Private Party got over, and Lucha Bros got over, and Pride and Powerful got over, and Scorpio Sky was the first one to tag team champion. And you saw, women being featured, especially women of color, whether it was Rio or Nyla Rose or Sheeta. And then what happened? A global pandemic, and everything like hit a standstill. And you had situations like, and the perfect one would be like Lucha Bros. Pentagon couldn't travel, and Phoenix got hurt. And you had travel issues for a lot of people. And then there were some times where people weren't featured for a variety of reasons. Whether it was, I think like after the pandemic hit, I feel like it was a while when we didn't see Pride and Powerful, and all of a sudden we saw them again. And some people will say like, well, it's great seeing Pride and Powerful part of Inner Circle, but they seem as Jericho lackeys. So what we're seeing two minorities being, the lackeys for a white man. It's a more complicated discussion to have at a different time that would take up way much, a lot of the time to have the discussion, and you would have a lot of different people would have different sets of opinions. The one thing I will say though is that I felt like since Double or Nothing and what they've done with Andrade and what they've, in some of the women matches, giving them, more time, I think they've done a great job. And, since then, featuring, people of color, and women in a big spotlight. So I think only as more time comes and as things are, back to, sense of normalcy, we'll see more of that. I think the other thing though, at the same time that people have that comparison, they're comparing it to the other company. And I think at one point, every single WWE champion was like a person of color. So the first thing is like, well, why are you AEW? You said this when you opened, but look at what WWE did. They actually did it. So like I said, it's a more complicated answer for, I think, for a discussion at a later time. That it just would take a lot of time, and you'd have a lot of different people who would have a difference of opinions. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing. Is just it's a difference of circumstances, I would say. But we'll move quickly on. We've got two quick things that we got to talk about. Backstage interview with Christian Cage, basically announcing he was the number one contender for the title, saying he's been here to cement his legacy, win championships, and he's been feeling good, but he's feeling a lot better than good. He's feeling elite. Nice little nod there to put towards what he's doing. Then we had the NWA Women's Championship Eliminator match between the Bunny and legit Layla Hirsch. The winner would get a shot at Camille's NWA Women's Championship on an episode of, I would assume, NWA Power, maybe another NWA show. Regardless, it would be in the NWA. This was actually really strong. We haven't seen a ton of Layla Hirsch recently. She had best friends in her corner, and of course, like, she was there earlier in the match to keep Bunny from interfering with Christian's match. And Christian was going to go out and help, but she said she had best friends already backing him up, so didn't need to do that. This was a nice little match to build up for the NWA Women's Championship, which I do like that is still being featured on AEW. They also had cuts to Nyla Rose and Chris Statlander, who would then get face-to-face during the match outside of the ring. Basically, the smallest way to lead into, like, oh, by the way, here's our women's match that's happening next week. It's kind of honestly, though I am excited for the match. And I honestly thought the Bunny was going to be the person to win this match just because she's been consistently used. It was not the case. Layla Hirsch got the win, which honestly probably makes more sense since they were building up her win record on AEW Dark and such for this moment. And the shot of Camille and Layla, just with the size differential, like, perfect story. Just looking at that shot right there of her holding the title over her. So that should be really good. I'm very happy that the NWA is continuing to do stuff with AEW and with the Women's Championship. Always still wonder if the men's title will ever show up on Dynamite, but regardless, that's always something we always throw around. But this was fun enough, a nice little, like, match with future implications before we got into the main event. JR, you got anything to say on this match?
I'm a big fan of Layla Hirsch because she has a grappling background like I do, and I've had a chance to talk to her, and I told her how much I loved her in a virtual meet and greet. I can't wait to hopefully meet her in person, but good Lord, that height differential was insane. I'm a big fan of Camille too. I just think Camille's money, and I would love to see her more in AEW. And the match itself is going to happen in 3 weeks from tonight at the first ever NWA All Women's Pay-Per-View in Power. They're essentially creating, like, as big of a stacked NWA Women's Pay-Per-View as they can, with it'd be Camille versus Layla Hirsch for the NWA World Women's Champion. Deonna Purrazzo will defend her Impact Knockouts Championship against Melina, and they'll have Chelsea Green will also be on the card. And then they're just as of right now, there'll be a lot of other people, a lot of other women as well. But yeah, that should be a good card. I'm really, like I said, I love this match because I love both these women. I think they're amazing talent, and look forward to that.
All right, Floyd.
All right. When I watched this match, it was weird because it was a good match, but I saw, like, the worst moonsault botch ever that I've seen in my life. When Layla did the springboard bouncy moonsault, and I know Bunny was supposed to move, but where she landed the moonsault was nowhere near where the Bunny was. Did y'all catch that? Or am I
mean, yeah, but it seemed like I didn't know where Bunny was laying, like, prior to.
Oh yeah, she didn't have to move because Layla was nowhere near. I thought that was funny personally. Thought the match ended up well. Then the Camille standing next to Layla thing. You saw a bunch of memes and pictures online. It's one's a pretty famous meme from a scene from a movie. and I thought it was pretty funny. But that's going to be a fun match because it's definitely going to be like David and Goliath type situation. But since Layla is such a good mat wrestler, I think, she can use that to neutralize it. But I thought the match was good. Thought the bunny was good. And I thought the match in general did what it needs to do and set up an NWA match. And I love the fact that, it's not a one-way street. NWA champion was on AEW promoting their title against the AEW wrestler, which is going to be on an NWA show. AEW showing that they're a partner. They're just not using people to get their people over.
Exactly, yeah. But then was the main event. And again, Floyd said how this episode of Dynamite really felt like kind of another one-match show. But what a match it was. Yeah, that was this. The American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes versus Malachi Black. Yeah, Malachi Black fucking came in, made a statement. He made the whole Brody Lee statement by just beating up Cody Rhodes and hitting that black mass, putting one foot on Cody's chest, and winning the match. It happened so fast that he literally nailed the kick. Commentators were like, "Oh, what a kick!" And then he just pinned him and was like, "Oh my god!" Like you're gonna look back at this and see how quickly Cody just went numb and hit the ground. And the whole idea was he was working the leg, and then all of a sudden one kick, he's out. He was working on one body part so much that Cody was not expecting a black mass to the face. And yeah, Malachi Black immediately making a statement. And then Tony Schiavone goes to interview Cody in the ring. And Cody cuts this massive promo pretty much close to on one knee with his injury, talking about how his legacy and how legacy itself is a funny thing, about how he got into wrestling when he was a referee, and his whole goal was just to get the title back, get his dad's title back, and then how his goals changed. He didn't know what was going to happen with his career. Made the line, he's like, I wasn't fired. They didn't fire me, I fired them. Whole line, which was kind of funny. Talked about meeting Matt and Nick, and now how people it was funny too, because I could hear the crowd very much trying to boo Cody, and I heard na chants as they thought Cody was leaving. But Cody, I'll tell you this, people, Cody knows how to make a crowd move along with him, because he quickly worked him back in, being people were laughing at us 3 years ago when we said this was going to be a revolution. We were going to have our own wrestling company. And now this is destination viewing. It's no longer an alternative. This is competition. And crowd immediately on Cody's side, all the way for him, talking about how we set the table. Now it's probably time for new people to eat. My face has been on everything for 3 years. I've carried the banner. But he says this, he thanks the fans, and then he starts taking off his boots, and the crowd just no, what is, the idea of Cody retiring was just no. And as Cody put his rings in the center of the ring, Malachi Black then quickly takes the crutch that was used to help Cody stand up and slams Cody in the back of the head, and just in the back of that, and Malachi Black smiling over Cody, and then the commentator shouting, "Did Malachi Black just retire Cody?" And that's how the show went off the air. So I'm gonna save Floyd for this. I want to go to JR first, and then we'll get to Floyd, because I know Floyd's just itching for this. But JR, thoughts on this final match, this main event, and what we saw after?
A few things. Malachi had such a great look. His entrance was phenomenal. Just the way, everything from the lighting, the music, the screen package, they did such a great job with it. Shout out to their production staff and whoever had played a part in that, because they did a great job. Malachi's, his look, his face, his mask he had was amazing. I think you're really getting an opportunity to see what he can do now that he has that creative freedom. I've seen some of his work prior to WWE when he was over across the pond with ICW, and he's just very creative. one of the questions I actually had talked to Floyd off the air, and I said, man, I don't remember him being so fluid. And it was like he never moved that way in WWE for whatever reason, whether they didn't want him to or he wrestled a different style. But he just, whether it was kicks, his transitions, like he reminded me of somebody who was like a grappler, like a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, judo grappler in MMA, where they just have these natural transitions for being such highly skilled, and he has great flexibility. I always felt he was a good wrestler, but even in this match was essentially a squash to Cody. I just like, he's a amazing, great wrestler, and eventually he's gonna have some matches where people are gonna see how great he actually is. To get him over, I mean, how else do you get somebody over? What better way than squash the face of AEW, the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes? As far as the extracurricular activities that occurred after the match, I will say, in my opinion, I thought it was a little bit much. It seemed like extra. I'm not saying that they should have done something like that to eventually potentially set up like a future match. I just felt they did a lot more than they needed to, because if you did everything like, he beats Cody, tries to get up, and Malachi comes out and knocks him out with another black mask, you would have the same result. And I feel like it just wasn't necessary. But I'm not one of those people. I swear, I feel like Cody wakes up and he has heat. Like, he wakes up and his toothbrush is already mad at him for some reason. The dude he attracts heat like there's no tomorrow. And so I'm not like some of these people online saying he made it about himself and all that. I just think they did a little bit too much, and that's it. Like, it's not gonna ruin it. The one thing I will say though, and this is some of the things that I have a different opinion from other people, and I will give a comparison to John Cena. So he beat Malachi Black. Malachi Black destroyed Cody. If they set up a potential future match, if Cody wins, in my opinion, it kind of takes away from this to put Malachi on the map. Because essentially it'd be, you won the battle, but you lost the war. If the last thing people remember that Cody beats Malachi, it would potentially take away some of that. And the comparison I say John Cena's, that's what some people felt when Kevin Owens beat him, and then he came back and went 2-1 on Kevin Owens. Rusev, he went 2-1 on Rusev, and then Bray Wyatt, he went 2-1 on Bray Wyatt. My timings are off because he went Bray Wyatt first, and then he went to Rusev, then Kevin Owens. But that's how some people look at it, is that he eventually won the war, even though he lost the battle. So I don't know what the end game is, but at this moment, I do think that this was the right move as far as putting Black on the map for this new audience.
Okay, this match was what I said it needed to be last week, and I truly mean that. It was what it needed to be. I saw some people really getting into the beginning of it, and I was in the movement and them playing off on each other, and Aleister Black just being one step ahead of Cody, and that's how it was. And even more important, he was trying to force himself up to the top ropes. He tried like 3 times before he got up to the top ropes, and Cody usually doesn't, telegraph himself like that. And when he got up to the top ropes, I believe it was the second or third time, finally Aleister Black, Malachi Black knocked him off the top ropes and through the table, and the match was over at that point because Cody just went from the top ropes through a table. Again, I love that they're making table spots and chairs and things like that matter. This mattered. He fell through the table. He wasn't coming back up again. Malachi gets him in the ring, kind of plays with his food for a second, and then kicks him in the face, and then just covers him with one foot. I don't know how anyone could say, let's say Cody comes back, and they do a 20-minute match, 25-minute match, and Cody beats him, rolls him up, however he beats him. I don't know how that would erase the image of Malachi Black pinning Cody with 1 foot. I just don't know. He was made in that moment. That moment made him. He is a contender. I think he needs to start picking up wins on Dark and Dark Elevation to pad his stats, but he's everything he needs to be right now. And then the whole Cody interview thing, I think the match might have ended a little quick. That was my thought when it was happening. It seemed like Cody was kind of playing for time until it was time for Aleister to attack him. So he added a whole bunch in there that shouldn't have been in there. But I think the match ended quickly, and that's why it happened. I might be wrong. That might have been the whole statement, everything he was saying. But it did feel like he was rambling at points. So then Malachi Black's like, nope, you're not taking my moment away by retiring. And then he knocks him out. And that completely, you're like, yep, I was gone, but you attacked me. And now that pulled me back in. Because I believe the retirement thing had to happen. The retirement thing had to happen for Malachi Black to show how vicious he is. And then to take Cody's moment away. And Cody will have to find his motivation again whenever they end up doing that match. I thought this was brilliantly done. I never in my life want to hear Cody versus Jeff Jarrett or Cody versus Triple H comparison ever again. Show me the match. Show me the match where either one of them did this for anybody. Show me that. And Cody's done it twice. He's done it for Aleister or Malachi. I keep saying Aleister, sorry about that. But one did it for Malachi, and then he did it for Brody Lee. 2 completely dominating, no offense basically from him matches. No one does this. No one. AEW comes first. This shows that he even says AEW comes first. People are like, why didn't he lose to a Go-Go or more often? If you keep losing big matches, moments like this with Malachi Black can't happen. It's, he just lost again. Him winning all the time leads to this moment. So,
all right.
Malachi Black, when they do the Malachi Cody match, when they run it back, which you know they will, this is pro wrestling, it's just going to have so much more stake. Maybe Cody kicks out of the Black Mass this time, which I don't think anyone should ever kick out of the Black Mass personally.
Such a cool move.
But maybe he learns how to avoid the getting in or something, whatever he does, whatever story they tell, it's going to be epic because Cody got laid down. That's my thoughts.
There you go. From the Cody man himself. And I got nothing else to add to that. Hell of a moment. Malachi Black is made. Like, he's so over right now. The entrance was incredible. His presentation's great. I'm so happy to see him in AEW. Cody may be going away for a little bit. I know, of course, we've got the reality show coming up on the horizon. I think it would be smart for him to go away for a little bit. But this episode of Dynamite Homecoming in Daly's Place, really felt like a one-match show. What a match it was, though. Another star has been made in AEW right then and there. Some other cool moments in the show. Nothing really too major. I think we can quickly move on to our preview for next week's Dynamite, and then we'll wrap up the show since we went a little long. The preview so far for next week, we get the Evil Uno Stu Grayson tag team match as they take on the Good Brothers for their Impact Tag Team Championships. Christian Cage will be there, and he will be speaking on matters, I'm sure, relating to Kenny Omega and the AEW World Championship. 4th stage of Jericho's labors, where he takes on Wardlow, and MJF seemingly will be the referee. Maybe they didn't get that across properly, but so far that seems like what they're going with. Nyla Rose will take on Chris Statlander in singles competition. Darby Allin will face Daniel Garcia, who will be making another appearance in singles competition. And then we will have Chuck T, Yuta, and Orange Cassidy face off against Private Party and Matt Hardy. And those were the matches announced. Do you guys got anything you got to say on the matches announced before we move on to our final news and notes?
I'm very excited about Darby Allin versus Daniel Garcia. I think this is a solid show. But this is like the ceiling on this show is like a B plus. This is not going to be 5-star A plus show. But, you know, if every match does what it's supposed to do, it's a solid, solid B plus show. That's what you need. You're going to need shows like this. Not every show can have a super marquee match.
JR, anything you got to say?
I agree with Floyd's sentiments. It's a good, solid card. I'm looking forward to. I like what they're doing with Daniel Garcia. Another name is like with the Willer Yuta. I like what they've done with these guys, these young guys, bringing them up in these, along the way. They're good talents, and I look forward to seeing them on future Dynamites.
All right. Well, we'll quickly move on to our lasting news and headlines that we have before we wrap up the show. Floyd, can you go down our list here?
All right. This is going to be real quick. First of all, we're recording on Saturday, August 7th. I think it's August 8th where Austin is now.
Yes,
but
it is past midnight.
Happy birthday, Chris Statlander. I don't know how old she turned, but happy birthday to her today. Then we move on to the sad moment. This week, we lost tag team wrestling expert and legend, beautiful Bobby Eaton. If you go to @Floyd Johnson Jr. and you look at the day, I put my tribute up to him. Cash and Dax from FTR both put their tributes. There was tributes coming in from everywhere. Me personally, I've been a tag team wrestling fan since I was born. I've always been about team. Me and my brother were, he was older than me, but we were a tag team. That's all we'd ever, talked about was tag team wrestling. Our first tag teams were the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express. So when I say Bobby Eaton is one of the reasons I'm a professional wrestling fan, I don't say that lightly. I generally, when older people pass away, I don't really feel a lot. I'm just like, okay, old people die. That's what they do. I know that's critical, but that's how I am. This one hit me. I thought about it a lot. I posted so much more than with anyone because he was a building block of my childhood. His career started in like 79. I was born in 81. So his career and my life kind of developed at the same time. So, yeah, RIP, Bobby Eaton. Did you have anything to say about it, JR? I know you're as big into tag team wrestling as I am.
It's it's tough, and even like if you go even a little bit more personal, his Bobby Eaton lost his wife about a month ago. So it's been a tough summer for that family. His wife, a lot of people may not know, is the daughter of superstar Bill Dundee. I've been wrestling through and through in that family. So my heart goes out to them. I had a similar situation where a friend of mine lost both parents within a month's time earlier this spring. And it's just, my heart goes out to them because that's just so hard to lose both the mother and the father in such a short time frame.
All right.
Yeah, I'm like, Bobby was after you. He was retired, like, I think a few years before you were born, sir. So
yeah,
so his career.
I unfortunately don't have much to say about that.
But
I have a lot to say about our last thing, though.
Yes. So, but I will say, Austin, Dax put up some clips of Bobby Eaton. I'm just saying, he was so fluid, and you got to think about the time he was wrestling in. It's old hat, but when he was doing it, it was 20-something years before people his size were moving like him. So, but the last thing is the big thing, and if you are only here for AEW talk, I invite you to go ahead and press stop because we are about to talk about the massive WWE releases. And I just letting you know, the AEW segment of this show is kind of over. So, WWE during SmackDown last night, August 6th, Sean Ross Sapp started reporting the names. It started with the big name, Bronson Reed, released from the WWE. And then it came through on Bobby Fish, Jake Atlas, Ari Starling. This is not in order. This is just how we have their names typed out. Kona Reeves, Leon Ruff, Stephon Smith, the referee, Tyler Rust, Zechariah Smith, Asher Hale, Giant Zangier, Mercedes Martinez. I am going to let you two comment first. We'll start with JR. What did you think about the mass exodus of releases from the WWE?
I'll try to say this real quickly, man. I had such a great day yesterday because I was off the internet. I went to the chiropractor, got my back cracked, took my wife to go get coffee. We saw Floyd's favorite wrestler, The Rock, movie Jungle Cruise. Went to see my parents. I took my grandmother out to for a drink, and then all of a sudden I decided, let me get off social media, and I kept reading like this is a bloodbath and this is the death of a brand. And I DM Floyd, like, what is this? As I was leaving my parents' house, I get home about 20 minutes later and I see it. And Floyd's like, look at my tweet. And I pull it up and I'm like, this mass, cut. And I'll be honest, I'm a little bit more cynical than most people. I've been jaded my whole, basically since I was a teenager. While I will say that I never want to see anybody without a job, because nobody deserves to be without a paycheck. I mean, I hate saying that line, but it's business. I mean, I work in the nonprofit sector, and we always have issues of people getting, people feel like we don't have enough staff, or people getting laid off when they shouldn't get laid off, or you go into the business sector, you go into pro sports, and so on and so forth. Like, this happens all the time. And I think it was said recently, I can't remember who brought it up, like WWE has over 200 contracted wrestlers on their, as far as their roster. They have such a plethora of talent that if they're going to do, and I know that, the term is budget cuts because that's what's being said by talent who's been released, that they were told that it was due to budget cuts, and everybody looks at, well, they have all this money. Yeah, it's true. But a lot of companies have a lot of money, and they always look at cutting their overhead down to maximize profits. I don't know why they're doing that. I also don't know, like, some of these people that have been cut. I think it was maybe been Alex Zane, who's Ari Starling, I think was signed like in January of this year. Even previous cuts, like there are people that have been signed, in the last year or so, that they never even got a chance to even be on television. Some of these people are cut as they were being advertised for 205 Live. Bronson Reed was the North American champion 3 months ago. Like I said, I don't know what the purpose is. I've heard rumors of a potential, like, I don't want to say rebranding, but I would say retooling of NXT. The last thing I will say is, I know I was gonna make a joke and be like, everybody's confirmed to AEW. AEW doesn't need to sign people. But I do hope everybody gets a job, because as I mentioned, I don't want to see anybody without a paycheck in any field you work in.
All right, going to me on this, and I'll wrap up. I'll wrap up my AEW related stuff on it. Of course, like with the releases, again, like, yes, hopefully everyone around here who is in these wave of releases gets work as soon as possible. And if you want to support any of these guys, I'm sure a lot of them will be putting stuff on Pro Wrestling Tees. If you want to support any of these guys and girls, absolutely do that. Support them right now; they'll need that. And in terms of AEW signings, like I said, like, their roster is getting to a point where it's like they're not going to be able to go through all these releases and sign like 4 or 5 of them that come out, because their roster is so large right now. So I don't really know who I would want to go to AEW from this list, and I don't really have anyone I want to comment on with that. Though I will say, like, yes, like, there are wrestling companies that need talent, and these are very talented people, and they will find work, and I hope they find work. To go off of JR saying it's business, I would like to point out that, like, we haven't been really this critical with WWE and their releases until, like, April of 2020, the 1 month into the pandemic, where they released many people, including Drake Maverick, which was the one that went viral, 1 month into the pandemic, and they said it was for budgetary reasons, even though they weren't losing money hand over fist. It made no sense business-wise. It made no sense reasoning. Like, no matter how many reasoning it gave to me, like, it made no sense. They didn't need to release these people, yet they did. And again, going down the line of the people that they released moving into this year, some of those people they then rehired only a few months later after they fired them. So I don't see how you run a business like that where you fire people and then like within like a couple months you bring them back, and like I don't see how that's proper way of doing business. Maybe that's just me, but also they were like, someone put up a list of like everyone that got released since April of 2020, including the releases that were just released now. Like it got close to 100. There's a difference between just business and like, I don't know what you're doing anymore. Because again, the only thing that makes any sense to me right now is that they are literally just trying to liquidate NXT or 205 Live. I think, yes, releases are a part of the business. Not everyone is going to be a main star. We know this in wrestling. We know this in any sport. We know this in any entertainment area. However, there's a way to go about it. And releasing people 1 month into a pandemic is not a way to go about it. Releasing people during an episode of SmackDown is not a way to go about it. Releasing people that were still advertised for products on the show for 205 Live is not a good way of going about it. I don't know what this company is doing. I don't know. And at this point, I don't see why it would be a happy place to work, considering like, you don't know, there's no job security because you could just get cut straight then and there and you don't even know why. So honestly, it's infuriating just to see the way this company goes about it. And I don't know what they're doing. Like the joke has gone up where they posted that picture of NXT and the of how it wants to expand into places like South America and Europe and all these places, like that picture that Triple H was standing in front of, and how that is aged very poorly. And I don't want to be too much like bashing on the company and all that kind of stuff, but like seeing this stuff just makes me upset. And like there's always, and the reason why it makes me upset is because again, like there's been so many releases, and this is the issue when you sign so many people and you don't push like 80% of them, because that's what's happened. You push 20% of your roster, the rest of them just sit in catering. That's kind of what's happened. Although for some of them, they were part of the greatest faction in NXT history of Undisputed Era, or they were literally just North American champion just recently. I don't know what they're doing. It's infuriating to watch. I hope these people find work, and I hope someone gets some sense of what's going on there, because honestly, just seeing Twitter and seeing these releases come out does nothing good, and it just makes everyone upset. It makes the vibe for working in that place probably awful, and I'm sure like just it must not be a great place to be around right now. And it's sad, honestly. That's all I got to say.
Okay. My thoughts on it. This sucks for everyone, especially people like Ari Sterling. And, I think Mercedes Martinez just is like still recovering from an injury, and she got released. It sucks for all of them. My biggest surprise was Tyler Rust. I'm like, literally, he just got put in a faction, and he was just on TV Wednesday. I was really, shocked that happened. But I really want to. I'm going to take it a different way than both of you. I listen to Meltzer and everything, and they say they're pivoting, and I take this as the NFL team. You have an NFL team that runs a spread offense. They got the Arizona offense, but you want to run your offense more like, let's say, Pittsburgh, a traditional Pittsburgh offense. You're going to have a lot of people that don't fit your new vision. So when that happens, you're going to have to release them. With WWE, I think it's a pivot in the developmental. They are getting, and I mean this on the lowest or lower level, they are getting a lot of Sean's and Brett's. And they need John Cena's. They need The Rock's. They need Hogan's. Right? They need people with the size, the strength, and the charisma to be a box office draw. They need to bring in major names. And if you look at any of these 12 people, the future of the WWE wasn't going to be built on them. And that is including Bronson Reed. I like Bronson Reed. I think he's a very talented wrestler. But he's limited on the mic, and he's not very tall. And he's not like super athletic. I'm saying this not to discourage him. I'm just saying, but when you're trying to build a company in a new image, and your people don't fit that, you release them. It sucks. It does. But now he has the opportunity to go somewhere else. He gets paid 30 days or 90 days, whatever his contract is, and then he has the opportunity to go somewhere else. I look at any of these 12 people. I don't. If you say, hey, which one do you want in AEW? None. Personally, I mean, I feel like we got somebody that does everything that everyone on this list does. I mean, there might be some dark potential. I went through the list and I was like, thought where they should go, but Impact, MLW, NWA, New Japan Strong. There's more places to work than there's ever been, and there's more places to make money than there's ever been. If they want it, they're going to find the spot, and they're going to be successful. I root them all the best. But like I said, I've seen this with Kansas City. I saw it when we were running the Mike Martz offense, and then we brought in Todd Haley, and we had to release a bunch of people because they didn't fit the offensive style that they were trying to do. And I'm not saying it's business, because it's not. I'm not saying it's just business. I might be describing it, but I'm not saying it. I'm saying when your company changes directions and changes what they're looking for, there are certain people that don't fit the mold anymore, and this happens. And when they were hoarding talent, maybe, I might have bitched about it, but I didn't bitch about it a lot. My biggest problem with WWE wasn't hoarding talent. It was that they weren't using it. It's that you had 200 men on the roster, and we were seeing the same match 6 weeks in a row on Raw and SmackDown. And it was just like, so they were showing these people that they didn't see a future in them anyway. And I think that's something that people one day that want to work for the WWE are going to have to start looking out for. Are you trying to work, or are you trying to get a check? And you'll see what happens there. But WWE is going a different direction. They are going to if you're not 6'1", we're not looking at you. And if you're not a former supermodel or fitness model, we're not looking at you. It looks like they're about to go that way. And this is the result of that. I can't say I agree or disagree, but I did say this. You are not going to beat AEW in the independent style major television production. You're not going to beat them. They do this better than anyone. You're not going to beat AEW at their style. And if you're not going to beat AEW at their style, what you have to do is offer something different that you can't get in AEW. And I believe that's what these releases and signings are leading to, them pivoting in that direction. But that's what I thought. Anybody want to follow up on what I said or anything before we close it out?
I mean, I'll just add, I don't disagree, because it's fun because I was literally listening to a wrestling podcast on my bike ride, and they were discussing WWE booking back in the late 80s and 90s, and the conversation came up, what would have happened if Ric Flair would have came to WWF in the mid 80s, with the greatest wrestler we know, that many people would say in the history of professional wrestling. They said he probably would have got buried because Vince would have pushed Hulk Hogan, because that's what Vince knows. If they're looking at what's not being, what we see as, looking at ratings and stuff, obviously they're making $600 million. What we're not seeing is what's the conversation between networks and WWE saying, hey, your ratings on SmackDown and Raw are not where they should be. We need more ratings, and where we need your ratings to increase. So if somebody said, hey, since we've gone this route of this independent, as you mentioned, independent style, which they've signed going back to the beginning origins of NXT, they signed a lot of guys from Ring of Honor, whether it was even before that was Seth Rollins or CM Punk, that preceded that, and it's not working anymore. What is Vince going to go back to? What made him big ratings? Those eras of Hogan and Warrior and the Attitude Era where everything was charismatic with The Rock and DX and Austin, and then with John Cena on the mic. So if that's where they're going, it's gonna be, as you mentioned, it's gonna be a completely different style than what AEW had. But when we started this Monday Night War situation, NXT had arguably as many independent stars or that did that style from the Undisputed Era and many more as AEW had, but they were trying to do, for lack of a better term, that main roster style booking, and it wasn't working. So it's gonna be it will be interesting. And for those who, if someone says I'm being an asshole, when I say business, I'm not saying like that to be callous. It's just I went through this back in July. I got a layoff notice saying like, hey, we're gonna implement layoffs. And that feeling, I remember I was at a Walmart and I dropped everything because I literally thought I was not gonna be able to have a paycheck anymore. And during a time of recession, getting that would have been, it ended up working out where a union was able to fight against it, but that would have been the worst thing in the world because then people started thinking about how long I've been here. So, and to your point where you talk about the NFL, Floyd, that I think that's a very apt comparison because and I'll end it with this, like being a Rams fan, we just lost our starting running back. And the first thing is like, well, why don't you go get 1-year-old running backs who's on the free agent market? And it was no, because he doesn't fit our style anymore because we're going a different direction and we don't want to pay him $1.6 million, which is his veteran minimum. We'd rather go with somebody who's younger that's going to do our style that we only have to pay $500,000.
All right. Well, that was a lot with all of us on that final note, and it's a rough note to end on for sure. But again, like I will say once again, if you want to support any of these people that were recently released and you are a fan of any of these people, definitely if you see them tweet anything or see where they go, see if they put anything on Pro Wrestling Tees, support them. Of course, they still have the 90 days, and they'll do that. And then, of course, we'll see what they do afterwards. Hopefully, they all find work wherever they go. But to wrap up this final show, I want to say, again, a massive thank you to JR for joining us once again on the show. It's always a pleasure to have him on. Be sure to check out his Trick or Treaters podcast. And again, where can people find you on social media, JR?
Real quick, as always, as I said, it's always a pleasure to get a chance to talk to you, Austin and Floyd. Actually, as we're talking, I'm watching All Out 2019, and I know for a fact that I see Floyd's beautiful face on the front row, and I think I saw Austin in your Super Sydney in the fourth row.
Yep, we are in like the 5th or 6th row on the hard cam, like straight on.
Are you wearing a hat?
Yes, I'm wearing an AEW hat, and I think
it's all in. Yep, shirt. I see your beautiful face
all
too.
In.
So.
Yep, that is me.
So, you guys can find me at Trick or Treat Pod. That's at Trick or Treat Pod. That is our podcast for the Trick or Treaters podcast. As I mentioned earlier, we just dropped Fear Street Part 1, 1994, and next week we will, on Friday the 13th, we'll drop #a live review. It is if I'm not mistaken, a South Korean zombie flick, Netflix original.
All right. Well, with that, again, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of All Things Elite. Be sure to download the show on Google or Apple Podcasts. If you listen to us on Spotify or any other podcasting platform, give us a share with your friends, family, coworkers, whoever you wish. Leave a rating, a review, leave a donation through Red Circle. We are at AT Elite Pod on Twitter, at Social Suplex are the guys that make this show possible and have a bunch of other podcasts. Be sure to check those out. I am at Austin Sumowitz, SZUMOWICZ for the last name. I know it's hard. And Floyd is at Floyd Johnson Jr. on Twitter. And with that out of the way, I will toss it to Floyd to take us on this episode of All Things Elite.
All right. Yes, tough stuff happened this week. Wrestling, but I have to say wrestling is more exciting than it has been in a very, very long time. So make sure you're supporting all the wrestling that you love, all the wrestlers that you love. But I will leave you with this. Get vaccinated, be kind, and whether you're at home, work, or school, always do your best to be elite.